Everyone talks about the price tag of foldables, but there's also a hidden tax that no one realizes until the honeymoon phase is over, and that's the innovation tax. I've spent the last few months daily driving the Pixel 10 Pro Fold, and to get this design, you have to give up a few features. Let's talk about the real-world trade-offs. Starting with the hardware. The latest innovation is the increased durability with the IP68 water and dust resistance, and then the addition of Pixel Snap. The great thing is that with the addition of these two great features, the phone didn't get any thicker. In the past months, I've had the increased ease when walking around with this phone where I don't have to worry as much about having it near any sort of dirt. In the past generations, they wouldn't guarantee that small particles of dirt wouldn't mess up the hinge. And with the IP68, they're kind of giving us that guarantee that it's not going to mess it up. Of course, there was a video with Jerry Rig Everything who tested it, and fine dirt is still going to get into the hinge. But there has to be something here that Pixel is sure about that it's not going to go bad. And also, to get the 6 in the IP68 water and dust resistance rating, it's going to have to go through some standardized testing, and so I must have passed that in order to get it. So it's got to be good enough to where it's not going to just break from having some dirt in it. So the only thing that I've obviously noticed is that the crease got a bit deeper, but that's just a break-in period for all the folding phones. But the screen itself is still functioning like day one. And let's not forget about the convenient Pixel Snap. This is gonna help in a few ways. One, we can use MagSafe accessories and magnetic accessories. The wireless charging is also gonna be better with Pixel Snap or with magnetic chargers or coils in it, because it's always gonna be aligned correctly. Of course, the tax in the hardware is gonna be the screen that I mentioned with the crease. So the crease is still not in a place where I would consider it to be unobstructive. And actually, when I'm reading something with the phone unfolded full screen, I tend to turn it into the landscape orientation because the crease is very bothersome when you're going, like when you're reading through the line and you cross it while reading. And it just blends it in, just has a small little shadow, and it's not as obstructive as when you have it in portrait orientation. I also noticed that with Pixel specifically, I have to wipe down the screen a bit more often, not because dirt gets in it, it's as good as the other ones with keeping the dirt out, but it's because Pixel has two lines that go down about 2/3 of the way in from each end, and it's actually pretty distracting when you're trying to read or watch something. So I constantly have to wipe it down, and that kind of increases the amount of maintenance that's needed to comfortably use this inner screen. And of course, we can't forget that the inner screen on foldables, doesn't matter if it's book style or clamshell, it's still soft and it's going to be very susceptible to scratches. Now let's move on to the software front, because this is obviously where the biggest changes or differences between any other phone style and large foldables really comes in. So with the large foldable, you have a much bigger canvas, and then it's great for productivity because you can have a split screen that's basically two full apps next to each other. And the way I use it is for budgeting, which I have my budget on one end, and then I go into the different banking sites on the other side. But I also use it for my scripting because I can have my notes on one side, my script on the other one as I write it out. And also I could do the research on one half while I, read out the rest of it as well. So it's definitely great for multitasking, and it's gonna help to make you more productive. And that's keeping in mind that Pixel still only allows a split screen of half and half, no pop-up windows. But even with that limitation, the phone is still a beast for multitasking in terms of phones anyway. And then the other ways is just to have the super large screen itself. This wouldn't necessarily be for productivity, but for ease of use and more accuracy. So when it comes to reading, having more words on the screen at one point, at one time is just more convenient. It's not gonna be life-changing, but it's more convenient. That's why people get the Kindles and everything like that to read. And this is kind of like having a glossy Kindle in your pocket. And then the other one is for photo editing, because I do like to edit my photos, and I'm not always on my computer, and I don't always want to sit on my computer to edit my photos. So having it here with the Adobe Lightroom is much more convenient. You have a larger window to view your edits on your picture, and then you have a bigger canvas to drag these sliders and use your radial gradients, your linear gradients in Adobe Lightroom. Now the tax for the software is that not every app is going to be optimized for this square aspect ratio. So if you use the full screen on Instagram, a lot of the pictures, if they're not on the square 1:1 aspect ratio, are going to be cut off on the top and bottom, or it's going to be so close that you're going to think you're missing a part of the photo. Now, of course, you can change the aspect ratio of the app so it could open up in the regular aspect ratio or a slightly narrower one. But then now you have to go into the settings and change it on the app to always open up in that aspect ratio. And then you have wasted screen. And the last thing I want to talk about is the cameras, because this is one that has kind of, improved and then gotten worse, depending on which manufacturer you're looking at. So one way to keep the camera hump smaller is to make the sensor smaller, because with the sensor being smaller, now you need less space between the sensor and the lens to get the same focal distance or viewing angle. And in the case of the Pixel, it's sharing the same sensors as the base Pixel 10, which it's not their pro level phone, yet this is priced way higher than a pro level phone. So that's where a lot of the disconnect comes from, where you're paying more than their premium price for this phone, yet you're not getting all the premium specs. But let's get into the performance of the cameras, because with the modern software, the optimization that's being applied to the photos, I'm not seeing much of a difference in terms of the regular snapshots. And when it comes to night photos, where the smaller sensors suffer the most by getting increased amount of grain and noise, having the foldable, getting it into tabletop mode and doing a long exposure is going to solve a lot of that actually. And as long as you don't have a fast moving target, the picture is actually going to come out cleaner than if you're hand holding the Pro phones. So even with the smaller sensors, having the foldable design could help you take even better photos. Now, there is no making up for the decreased amount of background blur, natural background blur, but there's always a software front where you can make it look pretty close to what it naturally looks like. And the examples that you've been seeing on the screen are actually from the original Pixel Fold that didn't have the same sensors. They're probably worse than these, even though they're similar in size. They didn't have the same level of optimization that this phone has, because it's been improved since the original Pixel Fold. So all these photos were shot 12 megapixel JPEG with a 3-year-old phone. And as you can see, like, the detail is mostly there, unless I'm cropped in, because some of these pictures were actually taken at 10x on that small 5x sensor that it has, and they came out looking pretty great, except for like some of the detail in the darker areas, like the bison that I showed has some artifacting there. But besides that, the pictures came out pretty clear. And so far, the Pixel 10 Pro Fold is behaving or showing the same amount of detail and everything, and it hasn't let me down yet. So for my final verdict, with these past few months using the Pixel 10 Pro Fold, the phone hasn't really missed a beat. The innovation tax hasn't really been a big factor, aside from maybe the larger or the last gen level of crease on the phone, but there's always a way to get around it and to deal with it. My favorite innovations for the Pixel 10 Pro Fold were the two hardware ones, with the IP68 water and dust resistance and the Pixel Snap. These are two quality of life improvements that I've been waiting for, because I like MagSafe accessories. I think they're very convenient, and I do wireless charging for everything. And also the IP68 with the peace of mind that comes with it while walking around is a big lift off my shoulders. And before you go, if you're interested in seeing how the Pixel 10 Pro Fold stacked up against the Z Fold 7 and other phones, check out these videos here for the PhoneUX protocol. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.